Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew, the CEO of Ardas. We are a software development company that specializes on building SaaS products. This is my masterclass about the CTO role in a software product. Many customers we support asked me these questions, and I decided to make a masterclass and share it with you. Hopefully, this will help you with finding or hiring an effective CTO. Let's begin. Many SaaS products struggle to find a good CTO. Sometimes they try to survive without a CTO, mostly in early phases. Let's get into details and talk about the CTO role and what you should expect from a CTO. First of all, what is the mission of CTO? Creating a software product is a development process and it cannot work without a professional manager. Under no conditions, this product should be left without a CTO. Although sometimes there are products that survive and even develop well without any CTO. This is possible because it is implicitly distributed among several employees, and often the owners do not even realize it. 30% of the problems occur because the wrong person is chosen as the CTO. Okay, here is the list of CTO duties. Let's go through all of them. Full technical responsibility and picking up the right technologies. CTO is responsible that technologies will satisfy business needs. Second one is management of development priorities and development roadmap that was designed together with owners and or CEO. In other words, CTO ensure the technical goals set by the business are met by a technical team. The next one is responsibility for the cost of development. CTO answers investors for the cost of production and optimize it. Also, leadership of technical team. CTO is responsible for management of tech team and the vendors. The last one is relationship development responsibility, is to communicate with investors if necessary or with technical partners or anyone who needs to get a technical overview or consultancy. Now, do you always need a particular person to be a CTO? I would answer not always. You can work without a CTO, but you cannot work without functions of this role. In small and mid-sized companies, it is so often happens there is no particular dedicated CTO. But this does not mean that no one is fulfilling his duties. In such companies, often all technical issues lie on the technical lead. All financial and partnership issues are resolved between the CEO and product manager. Now, an important thing is to understand that the CTO role depends a lot on the phase your product is at. We always separate the whole life cycle of a product into three major principal phases. Let's go through each of them and see who is exactly the best CTO for each phase. Phase 1, a startup. This phase covers the very beginning, creating and launching MVP, then stabilizing it, and up to the day when it starts to grow actively. The typical aspects of this phase are not enough money, and there is always not enough. The business model was not found and not proven, so the speed of change and experimentation should be very high. The team is very small and should be minimal in order to fit into a limited budget. You need to develop it in a quick and dirty mode in order to start checking the market faster and not investing in excess quality, reliability, security, and stability. Be very flexible to implement changes. Flexibility in this phase is more important than accurate processes. Now, let's see who is a CTO in a startup. Creating MVP and especially its costs are very dependent on CTO. Choosing technologies, teams, building a development plan, taking into account all priorities and all business requirements, creating MVP and especially its costs are very dependent on the CTO. Choosing technologies, teams, building a development plan, taking into account all priorities and all business requirements. leads either to successful creation of the first version of the product or to complete failure. Startup cost savings on 90% depend on CTO. CTO in a startup is not so much a manager as a jack of all trades. Most often, the development team consists of either one or several people, and there is no one to manage. Instead, he must do it himself. Therefore, the best CTO in a startup is a techie with extensive experience in development and preferably knowledge of different technology and approaches. All of the above does not at all seem like a classic understanding of the role of the CTO. It is a very technical lead, slightly a salesman, entrepreneur, and creative person. The worst mistake of the chief technology officer at this stage it is spending funds not in the right way. All of the above does not at all seem like a classic understanding of the role of the CTO. It is a very technical lead, slightly a salesman, entrepreneur, and creative person, all rolled into one. The worst mistake of the chief technology officer at this stage it is spending funds not in the right way to recruit a lot of people, to build some kind of unnecessary processes and over-architecting, develop unnecessary functionality, develop what is not verified by the market and what is difficult to sell. Allow yourself extra experiments. That is why you shouldn't take directors from large, established and mature companies as CTO startups. They are used to working in other modes and are not used to being sprinters. Now, let's check the qualities that a CTO in a startup should possess. We like the Adizes system and use it a lot in Ardos. So, from the point of view of Adizes classification, the CTO in a startup is producer, because CTO should quickly and efficiently produce results. Entrepreneur or businessman, because CTO should be flexible, not afraid to take risks, look for new effective ways and existing solutions, etc. Very few of an administrator and an integrator. At this stage, there is almost no need, because there is no one to manage and no one to integrate. For small teams, these qualities are needed to a minimum, and the best candidate for a CTO role is a senior lead developer or an architect, well-organized and creative person. Now, phase 2, which is a growing product. This is when the first customers appear, giving you real feedback. The development goes from idea-driven to customer-driven. This is when the first customers appear, giving you real feedback. The development goes from idea-driven to customer-driven mode. Check these growing product phase aspects. The goal of this stage is to gain marketing traction. That is, to do everything you need to prove the viability of business models. The business is constantly in brainstorming mode, and within 1 or 2 years, there may be several pivots that require drastic changes in the development strategy. At this stage, a CTO should ensure that the feedback from the customers of the product is implemented as quickly as possible, and the product begins to satisfy their expectations as much as possible. Now, most likely, the product is a pace for the development, or there is an investment. Therefore, the development goes into the budgeting mode, and the CTO should manage the budget as good as possible. You will have to work very closely with marketers in order to ensure maximum product fit to the market. So, CTO should be as business-driven as possible. Since at this stage most of the money goes into sales and marketing, CTO should provide support and maintenance of the product with a minimum budget, without spending money on the development of what does not provide marketing benefits. The worst mistake of the CTO at this stage is to be focused on something other than making the product as reasonable as possible for the market and going through the stage of establishing it as a business. Back to Adizes terminology, integrator, stronger than at any other moment, because if the project is growing, you need to recruit people, you need to form a team, you need to start delegating. And at this moment, it is important not to lose efficiency and create a good cohesive team. It is here that it is important to be an integrator more than anyone. Producer. It is very important here for a CTO to stop doing everything on his own, because he will turn into a bottleneck and the development will be jammed. Businessman. Now, being an entrepreneur is no longer his duty, so a CTO must switch his focus on the development process and the team. Administrator. It's time to start being an administrator, because otherwise it is impossible to manage people. The challenge for a CTO will be to correctly balance administrator and integrator abilities. And finally, phase 3, which is a mature product. This is not necessarily a product to be financially successful. It may not yet return the investments. But the most important thing is that the business model is fully proven, it becomes stable, and there is a very specific increase in revenue. Business security is of paramount importance as well as safety. The emphasis should be on projecting the product from all sides. As the number of clients grows, performance, server database architecture, and overall application speed are of essence. Because of this, you can lose customers. The level of delegation continues to grow. New positions appear, such as HRs, recruiters, multi-tier support, lawyers, CFO, etc. The staff is seriously growing. At some point, business processes begin to streamline. As a rule, at this stage, the product sharply begins to technically not satisfy the business, because it was developed according to compromising principles, with a minimum budget, in high-risk conditions. Now the CTO has a lot of work, because on all fronts necessary to modify the product and sharpen it under the growing customer traffic and growing loads. We call it a technical debt, and typically this is associated with the following issues: poor code quality and product architecture. CTO must properly organize smooth refactoring. From now on, the refactoring is an integral part of the budget and part of the development process. Security is a very complex and extensive topic, requiring audits, fixing a large number of problems. And when the project is noticeable, security holes should never be left behind, as it can be fatal for the business. Load scaling. Most often, this means that it is necessary to redo the entire architecture of the backend. Its complexity increases many times over. Test automation. Most likely, before that, there was no budget to automate testing. But now that the complexity of the system has increased many times, the number of people in the team has increased, the number of developed functionality has increased, you can't rely on manual testing anymore. Taking all that into account, the worst mistake of the CTO at this stage. This is if he does not have experience in developing large complex products. He decides to work in the old way and does not understand how important it is to switch to a professional development model. Most likely, the project will not survive for any of the above reasons. It just loaded the technical competition. Now back to Adiz's system again, and CTO for mature product will be integrator. You will have to continue to be an integrator if you want to create self-organizing teams and not spend a lot of time on its management, and also on solving all the problems of the human factor. Producer. At this stage, nothing has remained of the producer anymore. Businessman. Likewise, entrepreneurship is not at all necessary at this stage. The administration skills will be needed in the situation when your team has still not become completely self-organizing. Therefore, the entire list of administrative skills must be in place. The biggest difficulty of the transition is that It never happens at the same time in one day. This is usually a process that takes months, maybe even years. You need to be able to transform yourself and transform the team. The most unpleasant thing is that the most likely the same person will not be able to straight the product through all three phases, turning from a startup to other types until a mature, successful company with a large staff. This is due to the fact that good, talented technical managers and creators are unlikely to want to turn into an administrator and an integrator because they will have to give up their favorite business and do something else, and it's unlikely to be a pleasure. And most likely it will turn out that the product, in order to effectively go through all three phases, will need three different people. This is why changing a CTO at the right moment is a good idea. Another question that I want to target is, can a CTO role be outsourced? And yes, you can outsource the CTO function. Startup founders cannot hire a CTO since it is very expensive, so they go to a development company to develop an MVP. And this company can provide all technical support if they are experienced enough. At the growing phase, there is still a very limited budget, so having a development company to cover CTO functions is a great idea. We have been doing this for several customers, and this works fine. For a mature product, I always recommend a dedicated team, and CTO can be either local, in-house, or part of a dedicated team. Here we would recommend hiring a local CTO and having him collaborate with an offshore development team. This is how we work with a few mature software products, and consider this way of working to be the most effective on this stage. This is the end. Thank you for your attention, and I hope this masterclass will help you to better organize your development process. I'm happy to answer any questions you could have and discuss all your challenges in person. Just leave a message in the form below or drop me an email. See you later, and let's successfully deliver your idea. Bye!